haven't introduced myself.
So go ahead.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself.
So I'm Adrian.
I'm Raquel. I already did that part.
Yeah, we did that part.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while. And speaking of a while, can we first acknowledge the new haircut?
Oh yes, it's short. And this is long actually. It was shorter, so my cat's attacking me. So ignore him unless I start bleeding. And then okay, go.
Traveling.
While brown.
Oh yeah, traveling while brown. Yeah.
Not like overall traveling.
Yeah. And I think it's a perfect time because you literally just got back from traveling.
Yes. Well, though I don't consider this I don't consider this. This was like a vacation.
Okay. Why don't you consider it traveling though?
This wasn't on our notes, but
we got notes.
We have notes. But yeah, I think part of it, for me at least, is like traveling is more when you're a little bit out of your comfort zone, where it's a little more foreign, I think. And I guess I don't consider traveling nationally.
Stateside.
Yeah, which is kind of I don't know, uppity or kind of like that's bad, right? It's a bad thing. Yeah. So,
I mean, it's actually on our list about accessibility to travel. Because I think some people, would have a different argument with me than you if they had different experience and access to vacation or travel.
Right. I guess, it's for sure like privilege, and I think if we like take a step back in terms of where we come from and where our traveling comes from, because I think a little history might be good, but not like a little background would be good, like just saying why, at least what shapes our idea of what travel means, both for either of us. And I think that would be a good place to start in terms of what shaped our idea of travel or definition of traveling, and then what have some of our experiences been up to now.
Okay.
And some anecdotes might be funny
to
share.
I feel like last time you asked me to give context. Remember that one?
I feel like I do that a lot now. Then.
Yeah. Then I don't have any time, so why don't I let you?
I put you on the spot, and you're not prepared.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Why don't I let you give context?
Sure.
In terms of your experience and where you're coming from.
So I guess my experience and where I'm coming from in terms of traveling, I grew up undocumented, so traveling for me was not something that I could do until I was, 22 or something like that. 22 or 23. And then, so not only the document aspect, right, that was a big piece, but also just financially, I couldn't afford to travel. As a family, we didn't travel for document issues, and it just wasn't a thing. But I think when you grow up, as an immigrant, and especially in the United States, and then the idea of assimilation and the expectations of what it means to be an American, travel is almost expected, and it's also a very Eurocentric frame of mind, in Europe, that whole gap year and
gap year.
Yeah, you take a gap year before you go off to college, to travel, and you have all these. That is not only falling off, but also attacking me because he's falling off. Goodbye.
I didn't know the terminology. I didn't know it was called.
It's called a gap year. Yeah, it's that whole. Oh my God! Now I'm forgetting. But that whole, you're not what's that? Obama's daughter who took a gap year. It's a thing, sure. And then it was a meme.
I know it's a thing. I just didn't know that's what it was called.
Anyway, so that gap year being an expectation, traveling being an expectation, or family vacations, or that idea of just quitting your job and taking your money and going for a year abroad or something like that. That a part of me had that expectation, and so now that I'm older and I'm a citizen, I'm able to travel and have the money to travel. I think that experience has shaped the way I view traveling. Not necessarily made me more conscious, because I think we're always yeah, I think we forget sometimes where we came from, I think, and the struggles we had to start off with. So that's where I'm coming from in terms of my travel experience.
Yeah.
Thoughts while you're traveling, right? Like what makes a responsible, I don't know if responsible is the right word, but what makes a responsible traveler or aware traveler, and how can you, and for me, and I have a daughter, like I think about that, right? Like how could I instill in her both the love of traveling but respect of cultures when you're traveling, and respect of being aware that not everyone is as privileged as she is, because she's been to more different countries than I was
at
that age, for sure. And so without going into that, when I was your age, we had to...
Wait, so you don't do that?
No. I mean, I do.
As a Mexican mom?
No, I try and tell her I tell her how lucky she is and how privileged she is, but I don't, I do share my experiences with her, but not in that how good you have it kind. I feel like that doesn't create the right reaction, right? Because you don't want her to like roll your eyes at you. You want her to feel like respect your own experience and be aware of her privilege while also promoting that desire to travel and get to know other cultures. And it sounds cheesy, and I think one of our notes we had something about like reacting to inspirational travel posts, like I'm guilty of this, of saying like, oh, I'm a wanderlust, or
it's a wanderlust.
You know what a wanderlust is? God, really? Wanderlust?
It's like a vocab lesson for me today.
A wanderlust is just someone who doesn't stay put anywhere, who loves traveling, but it's very much cliched yoga pant, or pants with the elephants, wearing white girl with the curly hair. I don't know, just kind of like that. That's the image that comes to wanderlust. And that's also like a lot of internalized like unpacking that needs to happen, of like, as a brown person, you also deserve to want to travel, and people do it as brown people, and that's not. And so when I even saying that now, it just kind of made me like recognize some stereotypes that I have ingrained. Anyway, so we said like reacting to those inspirational posts, and like there's an eye rolling that happens, and like people say money's stopping me from traveling, and that's true. So
I think some people are not aware. Going back to being conscious of our ability to travel, that. Don't accuse me of being a hater. 3 people who are watching this right now.
Really? That's a lot. High hopes. Wow, I like it.
But I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to see if there's awareness in there, as small or inspirational. They're trying to be inspirational, I'm sure of it. But see if there's awareness of the privilege that they have, that ability that they have, not only financially, but in terms of like. Having a passport, specifically like a U.S. passport, to travel broadly freely to different places. So I think that's where the annoyance comes. They're like these posters that you see like at your local coffee shop, that try to instill that love, which is awesome, but also realize that not everyone has access. And going back to Sophia, I know we've had like. Probably you've forgotten. Like we've had discussions about it. I don't have kids, but for some reason I like to tell my friends how to raise their kids. I always get in trouble with this one about it. But I think I don't know if you remember. We've had like discussions about like, well, Sophia can't really like. I forgot what I said. Like, can she really take in like where she's going and appreciate
the experience?
The way a grown up can. And you were trying to tell me that you did want to instill that like. In your child, because you didn't have access to certain things growing up.
Yeah, I mean, I think she can. I think that hearing her talk about it now, the older she gets, the more obvious it becomes that she appreciates, and I think to a certain degree craves, like being around things she doesn't know. And I see that it makes her be able to relate to things in a different way, because sometimes when, as a kid, what you know is being challenged, it's really, if you don't have experiences to pull from, it's really hard to reconcile the difference. And it's really hard to accept things you don't know unless you have those experiences of like, remember that time we were in Iceland and you had to eat, like I just feel like it creates an ability to create her own reality to a certain degree that she can process in her own terms without having to take my word for it. She has experiences she can pull from that I think adults have when they make that, when they have the means and the privilege to travel, have that ability to create those experiences. And as a child, sometimes you don't have that because you're not exposed. But if you expose your child to travel and you're able to, then I think it's an advantage for sure. Yeah.
Wow.
So I've traveled a little bit about I'll share two anecdotes that kind of connect to what I mean about being brown. And two things, brown and fat, right? Being brown and fat and traveling in Eurocentric spaces or in Europe. Like when I have two experiences and one of them is Europe and the other one is not, but I think when you're traveling abroad to a foreign country, sometimes the expectation is that only like very specific social class and race have that opportunity to travel. So when you present yourself as a brown person at these places that are predominantly or traditionally white spaces, like when I was in Barcelona, it was very, very white. And not just like US white, but like European white, right? Like Europe white. And so I remember very clearly, like my sister and me were like just there in Barcelona. That was the first time I had been abroad, and we were walking down the main strip in Barcelona where all the restaurants are, and people are like approaching you, giving you flyers and trying to get you to go to their club or trying to get you to go to their restaurant. And a lot of the times, like we weren't approached, like because we didn't look a specific way. Like obviously my sister, well, both my sister and I are Mexican, but like I'm, brown and chubby, and my sister's like dark and thin, but it wasn't, the people weren't coming up to us and giving us flyers like come to this party or come to this club or asking us to come to their restaurants. They very much targeted like a very specific type of young woman, white traveler. And I remember thinking about that, like, and feeling like, hey, I want to go to the club. Like, why don't I get a flyer, right? And being very much aware of that, of how we didn't look like your typical travelers. And so therefore, the way we were treated wasn't the same as other travelers, which isn't necessarily a bad thing all the time, but there is that expectation of this is what travelers should look like, and this is who we want, to be in our space, or to be going to our restaurants, or to be attending our clubs, etc.
Do you think that there was also an assumption being made, not necessarily, the skin color or body type or not? Do you think there's also an assumption made that based on your color, the means you have or don't have? Like,
I'm sure.
They associate, people with money as the white travelers,
right?
And brown people as not having the means.
Yeah, I think so. Because I think, like, even when I go back to Mexico, this is another piece. Like, when we went, one of our friends got married in Cancun, and they did like a, like a way. What is that called? Like a
retreat wedding.
Not a retreat. It's like a getaway. We're so awful. It's like at a resort. So it's like an all-inclusive resort. And so we went, right?
Destination wedding.
Destination wedding. Good job. So we went. It was at this big fancy resort, and it was in Cancun, and all-inclusive. And it was expensive, right? My sister went. Two of my sisters went. I went. My mom didn't go. And so it was a bunch of us, and it was predominantly like there was a lot of, Americans there. There was some African Americans, but mostly Americans. like white Americans, and some Hispanic, Mexican travelers, not many. But so when we were checking in, the guy at the front desk was like, we were talking to them in Spanish when we were checking in, right? And the guy at the front desk was like, "Wow, you must make a lot of money in the U.S., right?" And my sister was there, and she said, "No," he said, "You must make a lot of money to be able to afford to come to this place, right?" And my sister's like, "Well, I'm a teacher," because my sister's a teacher, and so she's like, "So I make good money." He's like, "You must have had to save a lot, huh?" It was just this like this idea that even in our own country, right, like this is expectation that we can't, because of our skin color, we can't afford or shouldn't be in these spaces. It was a really funny experience. So yeah,
Do
I
you think
think
again,
there's definite that
was there?
expectation.
Do you think there was any part of that that the person maybe was? I don't know. I think it's called devil's advocate here.
No,
No,
I think they were being really serious.
no, that the person was like excited or felt like out of some sort of sense of pride, like wow, the paisanos made it. Like,
No, I don't think. I mean,
okay.
maybe, I don't know. I can't. I don't know. I can't read their mind, but it was very much a like,
Right.
how are you paying for this kind of
I think
thing?
that also that's I think it's called I think in the African American community they call it colorism, but I think
Oh.
the idea that light skinned African Americans get treated differently than
Oh.
darker skin, and I think that's also an idea, a concept, something that also is pretty prevalent in
Oh,
in
for
Mexico,
sure.
you know?
Yeah, I
And
agree.
and I know you're going back to how you felt you were treated with your sister.
No, I think. I mean, I'm not as dark as my sister.
Mhm.
My sister's is a lot darker than me, but I'm chubbier than I'm a lot chubbier than my sister. So I don't know. So I think between the two of us, we presented a very odd picture. I think
For them.
yeah. But like in opposite of that, like, or a similar experience, but in a different context, like when we went with my sister again and my niece, for my niece's senior year graduation, my sister and me like took her abroad to Vietnam for a week, and we went to Vietnam and we went to Cambodia. And in Vietnam, it was really interesting because I got a lot of stares for my weight because I was real, like I was a lot more, I was heavier than I am now, and so I received a lot of like weird looks because of my height and my weight. In one instance, like we were just walking around and there was some dude leaning on his motorbike, and as the three of us walked by, and both my sister and my niece are, thin, like just average sized humans. And we walked by, and the guy just kind of whispers, how in a catcalling kind of way, but not in a catcalling way. I forget his exact words, but he made a reference to like me being fat, and he said something like, "Damn, baby, you're fat," or something like that, or "girl." I don't know what he called me, but something fat. And we all kept walking, and we all ignored it. Like the three of us, we didn't acknowledge it. I felt it, and I, kind of and it triggered, a lot of emotions, and I held back my tears because I didn't want to cry, but definite like emotion and definite triggering. And so that was one experience. And I think we were like in Ho Chi Minh or Hanoi. I think we were in Hanoi. And then when we went to Cambodia, we were in the hotel, and there they were also very impressed by my height and weight and size. And I had this very short, like young man, like he must have been a teenager, early 20s, wanted to take a picture with me, and just try to like put his little arms around me. It was really weird. It was just, but believe it or not, I didn't feel as bad as when that other guy who just kind of called me fat as I was walking by. Like that didn't trigger. I still felt like this oddity, like this, like that circus freak kind of thing, but it didn't trigger the same response as the other guys did. So, and there, it was definitely not a color thing. I mean, maybe it was that they're not used to seeing someone brown and fat in their space, And so maybe it was like, whoa, what's going on here? No,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's two very interesting experiences. And I think the more I travel, the more conscious I am of those things. So,
Mm-hmm.
or the less I try and be conscious about it. I don't know.
About people's perception of you?
Yeah. Yeah, like just not thinking about it.
Although I wish people were more conscious of their behavior while abroad.
Like, what do you mean?
So one of the things that I notice, I mean, that I'm hyper aware of, is how other people who also have access to travel and money, when they go abroad, how they use or they present themselves with this privilege and means. And sometimes sometimes it doesn't paint a good light on people. Like
how they behave when they're abroad?
Yeah, like how they behave when they're abroad, because they have, again, I'm being presumptuous here, because they have the means to, so then sometimes I feel like they have this sense of entitlement and how to, speak to people or, treat people. Like, case in point, I went to, here's my bougie moment. When I went to Peru, when we went to Machu Picchu.
Is it Machu Picchu? Yeah,
it's Machu Picchu.
I know.
In Peru, it's a lot of tourists everywhere, and a lot of white tourists, whether they're European or Hispanic or whatever, but there's a lot of white tourists there. And just some little tidbits that I noticed about people's behavior, around these spaces. And so, and again, they're like micro things that maybe to, I don't know, an untrained or ear, or somebody who's not as hypersensitive about certain things, that they wouldn't blink twice over it. But like things like people not following rules in a sacred place like Machu Picchu, right, when explicitly told they can't do something, and they still did it anyway because, I don't know, they paid or they feel like it's no big deal.
Right.
Or like there was this one guy, he was speaking English. I'm assuming he was American or European or Canadian, and he had his own personal tour guide, and he was trying to explain to him, like, we can't navigate that way. And here's this guy who I'm assuming paid for his services as a guide, personal guide, is like trying to argue with this guy who lives in the country and knows the place. Like, why can't we go this way? Why can't we just? I don't understand why we have to. And here's this, short statured Peruvian man trying to tell this guy, like my minor Peruvian man trying to tell him, we can't because we have to keep going this route. And so little things like, and I thought you were gonna reference this story when I said, I think I know what we're talking about. Where, like, although I will say, here's a tip: if you go to Peru, a lot of people with their indigenous traditional clothing will make money by having their pictures taken. It's typical of a llama.
Yeah.
No, it's true. It's true.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. They make money. You'll see in the travel books, the travel videos, but obviously, always ask.
Don't assume that you can just take a picture.
Yeah, don't assume, because, like I said, people do make money off of this, and even if, just never, always ask for permission to take a picture. Never make assumptions.
I know.
Now you know. Okay. Tidbits like that. I won't mention the poncho story just because it's sort of like it won't. Never mind. But I wanted you, if you wanted to bring up the story about, this is what I say about, like, I always ask for permission and don't make assumptions about people who are native to a certain country. You want to?
Yeah, I'll tell my stories. For a second, I finished laughing. So when I was like, 20? I think it was like 2021. So when I was trying to fix my papers, I had to be in Mexico for a while. So I had to live there. And so my friend came down to visit me. My friend who from high school, she's Polish, and she came down to visit me.
Anna?
Yeah, it was Anna. And so we were in Tasco. We were traveling in Tasco. Tasco is a small city/town in Guerrero, which is the state I'm from. And it's known for its silver, and it's very colonial, beautiful, and
I didn't know that was in Guerrero. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, Tasco is in Guerrero.
Yeah.
Joan Sebastian is from.
Oh.
So it's
For all those John Sebastian
Hey,
fans
for all
watching
the
this,
John
there's a
Sebastian
tidbit.
fans.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we were there, and I was wearing this dress that I found in the States, in a thrift store in the States, and it was like this black dress that had this like ruffled, like off the shoulder kind of neck style. So it looked a little Spanish almost. It was black with like this black and gray design, and it was off the shoulders. And I was just sitting on the bench waiting for Anna to get out of wherever she was. Sorry. And I was sitting there looking around, and some white lady comes up to me, and she's like, she said something like, "Can I take a picture of the señorita?" And like she was speaking in Spanish and in English to me, or like broken Spanish, and she basically just asked if she could take a picture of me. And I told her, I'm like, I answered in English. I'm like, you can take a picture of me, but I'm like, I'm not from here. I'm just visiting, just like you. And so she's like, okay, well, sure. And she was with her daughter, and her daughter, you could tell her daughter was like mortified. Her daughter was like bright red, super embarrassed. And so I let her take a picture of me, right? And so then Anna came back, they left. Anna came back, we went back to our hotel. And in the hotel lobby, as we were like, we crossed paths, and I was like, oh, hey, we're staying at the same hotel, to the mom and daughter who asked to take a picture of me because they thought I looked like a Mexican señorita, which I am. I was.
Like an indigenous.
But not like an indigenous Tasqueña Mexican señorita. So
I did not know the part where that you guys
we were staying at the same hotel.
That is like a sitcom episode right there.
Like we were literally like, Anna and I were like walking in, and they were like standing around the entrance, and I was just like, oh, hey, look, we're staying at the same hotel. It was hilarious.
Right. No one take that idea. We're gonna type after this. We're gonna type that up.
It's a thing that happened.
Yes.
For real. So that's the story. Yeah.
Remember towards the beginning, you were talking about like when you go to these places, like who typically has the means to access these places. Like even when you go to like Mexico, like not like places like Cancun, and it makes me wonder like who typically has access to certain parts of Cancun or those fancy hotels. And a lot of times the only time I've been there, it's people not from Mexico.
Right.
And it got me thinking about other places, other colonial towns like San Miguel de Allende.
I've never been.
I know, but you know who loves San Miguel de Allende?
White people?
White people.
White people.
White people love San Miguel
love
de
San Miguel
Allende.
de Allende.
Anytime not anytime, probably like 3 white people that I've met.
Anytime
I mention anything Mexico, and they'll tell me how much
they love
San Miguel de Allende. And like, never been.
I've never been.
Never been. But I
did visit Puerto Vallarta.
Is that also
last year? That's also a very white,
really,
and German. I think like German tourists and white, American white people like it.
Yeah, there's a big well, I don't know how big it is, but there's a sizable expat community in San Miguel de Allende.
I believe it. In Puerto Vallarta too.
Yeah, and it had me thinking about again what you just said about who has access. Like I wonder like how many people from that area have, because a lot of these people, they're homeowners, they establish businesses there, and I'm wondering how many people, local people,
actually,
from the area have access, have their own homes, are business owners. And again, not to necessarily like criticize the means that people have outside of the country, but it makes me wonder about, why is it easier for people from outside places who have money, the means to come in and...
Well, I think you just said it.
Okay,
there you go. They have money.
They have money.
We're at the 35 mark, so anything else you want to add before we sign off?
We're going to sign off?
Oh, no. I mean... No. I'm saying.
34. By the way, I really like that because I don't know, we didn't point this out.
Kind of matches, right?
I mean, the theme is travel, and we got 4 maps. I mean, I think
6 maps.
We got 6. So that's Mexico City, and that's Paris.
That's Mexico City.
And that's...
This is Chicago.
That's Houston.
That's not Houston.
This is Houston.
That's not Houston.
And this is...
This is London.
I think this is Boca Raton, Florida.
No. Mexico.
Okay.
You see that? That's the train, the metro system in Mexico. This is Chicago, where we're at. Whoop, whoop. That's DC, Washington, DC area. And then over on the side, that's London. Then here's Paris, and then in the corner is New York.
Wow. Have you been to all those places?
Nice
Cool.
leading.
Yeah.
Yes, I have been to all those places. So those are maps of the metro systems that I have actually ridden on. No, like
Mhm.
ridden on.
Sure.
Sure, like traveled on to get from one place to the next.
So our takeaway. Can I do a takeaway?
Takeaway.
Takeaway. Be aware of your privilege if you have the means to travel, whether it's financial means or means because you're a citizen or you have a passport. Please be aware of
Places you travel.
sure the places
Treat those
you travel.
around
Yes.
the people you interact
Yes.
with abroad with respect.
Try to limit the amount of ponchos you buy and walk around the town square. Like,
In fact, don't buy ponchos. Actually,
buy your ponchos, but like.
give it to someone you hate.
Sure, or don't. Why does a family of 10? Why do you all have to wear your ponchos as you go to dinner that night? And obviously, when I mean you guys, I don't mean like the locals are buying ponchos and sporting it at the town square. I mean, listen. I appreciate the business owners. Appreciate
Right.
your
Support
business.
the
Yes.
Don't really hassle. I mean, if you got the money to be there,
Ooh.
just pay it, dude.
Yes.
You're there. Just don't haggle. Like, pay the money. They need it. You don't. I mean, maybe you do, but in which case, don't even buy it. But like,
In which case, don't travel to different places.
yeah, right. Well, just because that's a pet peeve of mine that I've stopped doing.
Oh, you used to haggle?
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Mhm.
I did used to haggle. But you know what? I blame Jonah because
He's a white husband.
my white husband. Because when we go to Mexico, I feel like they automatically jack up the prices because they see this tall white dude next to me, and they're like, "You get the tall white dude tax," and I'm like, "Come on, that doesn't cost 50 pesos." When I know that when I'm here by myself, I can buy it for 15. So I blame Jonah for that.
Yeah.
But I'm learning not to do it and to just pay the price, especially when I'm abroad and know that you're a tourist, therefore you're going to pay the tourist tax. Let that be that. Okay, that's my takeaway. Is that it?
That it?
All right. See you next time. Ciao.